Hey YouTube, it's Amy, and today I'm here to talk to you a little bit about the first steps you need to take if you want to start your own business. So stay tuned. Just a quick mention before I get into that, down below you will see a link to my free Furniture Flippers pricing worksheet. If you're interested in that kind of stuff, click on that link so that you can do some calculations to figure out how much you should start asking for the furniture that you're flipping or painting. Also, how much you can afford to pay for it and still make what you're hoping to make. So check that out in the link below. Please give me a like and subscribe if you're interested in videos about furniture painting, furniture flipping, mural painting, other kinds of ways that people use their creative skills to make money. That's the kind of thing I talk about here on this channel. I'd love for you to join me. All right, the reason I made this video is that I hear fairly often from people saying, oh, you know, I'm ready to hang out my shingle and start my little business, and I paint furniture and do all this cute stuff, and I want to start selling it, but I've come up with a name for my business and I'm not sure what I need to do to get started. What are the first things I need to do, and how do I start? And I feel a little bit stuck because I'm not sure where to go. So today I just wanted to address briefly what are the first little steps you need to take, the bare minimum that you kind of need to do to make sure that you're being compliant, doing everything you're supposed to do, and that you're able to be out there trying to sell these cool things that you're making, whether that's furniture flipping, whether it's painted furniture where you're fixing it up and selling it. Maybe you want to sell it in like an antique mall kind of a place, or maybe you want to do a craft show or a holiday market or something like that. However it is, you feel like you're ready to start kind of selling to the public and making that connection, and you need to make sure that you're doing the right first steps that you need to do to get there. So that's what we're going to talk about here. Well, I've been a self-employed freelancer and manufacturer of products that I wholesale and all kinds of different types of things. A muralist. I've done all those things for the better part of 30 years. And so I've always worked for myself, and I've learned a lot along the way about what things you need to do to obey all the rules for the government, for taxes, and for, you know, everything you need to do to make sure you're doing your side of it. And that, I get questions from people who are just nervous that they're not sure where they need to start and what they need to do. And sometimes if you consult with somebody, if you ask somebody like an accountant or a law person, they will give you a laundry list a mile long of the things that you need to do before you start a business. And what I see over and over, unfortunately, is that people see this list and go, wow, I'm not ready yet after all, because that list is a mile long and it costs money to incorporate and to do all these kinds of things, and I guess I'm not there yet. You know, I don't have a logo designed, and I don't have, you know, business cards and all this kind of stuff. Well, I want to make this video to encourage you that you don't need to have all those things to get started. And in fact, I don't even think it's a good idea to invest the time and the energy and the money in all those things before you've really defined what your business is going to look like, what personality it has, what you want your customer-facing image to be. You need to learn a few things, and you learn those things by doing. So what I'm here to talk to you about is what is the minimum kind of stuff you need to get started to be compliant and legal and to be doing the right thing, and then what are the things that can wait? Because sometimes, unfortunately, we not only get intimidated by seeing a list of all this stuff that somebody says we're supposed to do, but also, and I don't know if you're wired like this, but sometimes I can be, we almost like let that be an excuse for not starting, because it's like, well, I can't do all that. I mean, there's no way. I don't have the money, I don't have the time. And so that is our convenient excuse for not like taking that leap and getting started. And the one thing, if you take nothing else away from this video, the one thing I want to tell you that I've learned from experience is that the regret that's bigger is a regret of not starting sooner. That's a bigger regret than a regret saying, oh, well, I wish I'd picked different, you know, colors for my logo, or had it designed by a different person, you know, in the beginning before I started. I mean, that regret, that's, first of all, it's easily fixed, but it is not a big one. The regret of not starting sooner, that it pays off in spades. The sooner you start, the sooner you can build, the sooner you can exponentially start to grow and to know what you're doing and to feel more confident and to make more money, and success breeds success. So the biggest mistake that you can make is to delay starting because of this or that excuse or fear. And so while I'm going to talk to you about some of the needs to have and the nice to have kinds of things in starting a business, the one thing I want to say is get started. Get started. Do what you need to do to get started. Some of these things you don't even have to do them to get started. And just get started, and you will grow, and you will start to see what you need to do next. And then you can ask me more questions and I'll tell you more about the next steps. The one thing that sometimes people talk to me about is they say, well, I've picked a name for my business. And so what do I do to make sure I can use that name? And then how do I use it? How do I start using it? What do I do? And that's the fun part, right? It is fun to imagine that you're having a business and you're imagining the logo and the name of it and all those things. The first thing I would say is, for a lot of businesses, you don't even need to do that to get started. So if you're flipping furniture or even reselling furniture that you're painting and you want to sell it someplace, I would recommend that you start selling it on Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, OfferUp, someplace like that. Start that first. Anybody can do that. You don't have to be a business and you don't have to have a business name. And you'll learn from that, and getting started and even getting a few dollars in to start your business, that will help you with all the other things you're going to do. So again, start sooner rather than later. Now, if what you're saying is, I want to do the Chi Omega Christmas Market this year, you know, it's a show that I'm going to go and sell my stuff at, or I want to get a booth at the local mercantile or antique mall or something like that. Okay, so you may need to have a name for that. You feel like you need to have a name for that booth. You probably don't necessarily even have to. You could probably just sign up under your own personal name. You don't necessarily have to have a little sign hanging that says what your name is. I don't know how much the customers care if there's a special name to that booth, or if they're going to buy what's in the booth because they like the way it looks. So you don't necessarily probably even have to do it for that. But if that's where you're going and you feel like you need to name your name and get it started, and you know, let's say you're going to name your Fiona's Fanciful Furniture because you paint this gorgeous furniture that you find secondhand, and then you give it new life, and then you sell it for more money, and you want to have a booth in the local mall. Okay, so you want to take the name Fiona's Fanciful Furniture. Here's what you need to do. You just need to register it with the proper authorities and let them know that you're going to do business under that name. So I'm going to explain kind of the reasoning behind this, and that will help you remember what it is you need to do. I think there's all these rules, but once you understand why, then you can easily remember. If you're going to start doing business under a name in your city or state or county, the authorities there need to know who's doing business under that name, so that if you did happen to be ripping people off or doing something awful and they came and reported, this person stole from me and their business was called Fiona's Fanciful Furniture, then the people in your county need to know who that is. Who is Fiona of Fiona's Fanciful Furnishing, so that they can go find out what's going on and remedy this situation. So basically, if you are starting out on your own as a sole proprietor, that just means you did not form a corporation or a limited liability company. You're not creating this entire legal entity separate from yourself. You're just saying, I am selling furniture. I'm a person selling furniture, but I want to have a name for my company. I don't just want to sell it as Fiona Smith. I want to sell it as Fiona's Fanciful Furniture. Then what you need to do for a sole proprietorship, now I am speaking for the United States and specifically for Texas, but for the United States, this is across the board going to pretty much be true. And in your area, once you understand that you need to find the local authority and tax governing people who are in charge of this, you can, with a few Google searches, you can find out who in your area you need to be reporting to. In my area, the county for a sole proprietor is where you need to register your name. If you're not big enough that you're forming a corporation and have to register it with the state, then you have to just register it with your county. So to find out if anyone else is using the name, you go to your county clerk's office, or you go online and you can do a search, an assumed name search. And that's the rule. The rule is that no one else in your county can be doing business under the same name if you want to. If someone else is already using that name, then you're going to have to find a different one. Now, if someone in another state or another country is using that name, you can still use it. You may want to find out if you can get the domain name, because you're dreaming that this is going to become a big, national or international company, in which case getting the domain name that you like may be harder than getting the registration for your state or for your county. So you can start there and find out if it's available. And then if the domain name that you want is available, then you can see if it's available in your county or your state, wherever you have to legally register it. So If you find that it's available and no one else is using that assumed name, then you can register for that and say, I'm doing business under this assumed name. It's also often called a DBA, which stands for doing business as. So you would be Fiona Smith, DBA, that's doing business as Fiona's Fanciful Furniture. And that's what that stands for when you see DBA. It's the same thing as an assumed name. Assumed name sounds almost like, somebody wanted by the FBI, but it really just means I'm using this name for my business, but that business represents me. I'm the person behind that. And so if you find that it's available in your county, then you want to go ahead and file for an assumed name certificate. And it does not cost very much. I want to say the last time I registered one, it's like $22 or something. I can't remember exactly. It's not a huge significant amount of money. And you register that, and then you will have the right, they usually last 5-10 years, something like that. You'll have the rights to use that name. And then you can just start using it. You're done. You can start using that name. And the other thing I want to explain to you is, in the eyes of the government, in the US at least, if you're a sole proprietor, then that is the same as means it's just you. And so for tax purposes and everything else, you can just use your own regular personal checking account, because the government says Fiona's Fanciful Furniture is Fiona Smith. They are the same to us. There's no difference. But what I recommend that you do, just to make it easier for you, if you can, is just get a secondary checking account when you're able to do that. And again, if you're a sole proprietor, you don't necessarily have to get an official business account with your bank. If you just get a second checking account, that will just make it easier for you to keep all your money separate from your personal stuff. And so it makes it helpful. Again, it's a nice to have, not a need to have. So don't let this stop you from doing the thing that you want to do. Get in there and get started and give it a try. Now, the other things I would say are, down the road, there are some other things that would be nice to have that you can look into. Things like having a sales tax resale number so that you can not pay tax on your materials and things that you're using. Things like, again, a business account or a personal account that's going to be used just for your business type stuff. And it's helpful to you if the checking account can have the name of your business on it, in which case you may need to get an actual business account through the bank so that you can have that business name on your checks. And you'll have to show your registration of your assumed name to the bank so that they can make you an account with that name on it, because you're proving, again, that you have the right to use that name. Those things are nice to have, but to get started, you don't have to have those things. So one thing that I want to talk to you about is that when it comes to all the things like taxes and business names and all the kind of different certificates you might need to have, or this or that, especially if you're like reselling furniture or flipping furniture, you don't need that in the beginning. If you start doing this as a full-time gig, then you do need to think about, okay, I'm making enough money off this that I need to report it and that I need to treat this like my real business. But in the beginning, the first few things you do, no one is going to expect you to be treating that like a full-time business. I mean, everybody knows that people are allowed to have a garage sale on a weekend, and they don't expect you to collect sales tax for those things that you sell at your garage sale. They have written into the laws these exceptions for these kinds of things for small turnarounds of used secondhand merchandise. And anybody is allowed to get a new table in their kitchen and sell their old one on Facebook Marketplace to make back $100 or $200 off that without the tax man coming after you and throwing you in jail. So when you're starting and you're just doing a few of these things to see how it feels, you can just start. It's okay. You can do that. Now, when you get bigger and you decide you're ready to do this as your full-time gig, you need to treat it with respect, treat it like a real profession. And not only will you be doing everything you need to do legally for taxes and for all that stuff, but you are going to be more successful because you take it seriously, you treat it like a business, and you treat it like your job. But that's not where you are in the beginning. And I think too many people either get intimidated and delay or stall or quit before they even start because they think they have to do all this stuff, or they just spend all this time and energy designing their logo and choosing their colors and getting the business cards. And you don't need any of that stuff in the beginning. And in fact, you will know yourself and your business better after you've done it for a little bit. and you'll be able to design a better logo and make better choices about what you want and how you want to do things. So I would, in the beginning, only do the bare minimum that you need to do to get started. And then you can try it on and see how it's working for you. And then from there, you can go on to some of the other things that will be helpful to you in business. Okay, so just to wrap it up, my number one thing I want you to remember is you don't have to do any of this stuff, or probably almost none of this stuff, before you get started. Just get started. If nothing else, just get started. If you do need to register a name, you basically register it with the county. You fill out an assumed name certificate, unless you have already created a corporation or a limited liability company or something like that, in which case you have to register it with your state. But it's basically the same thing, only at a state level instead of at a county level. Okay, so in that case, you go to the Secretary of State. You search, again, to make sure that the name is available, and then if it is, you go ahead and register it. And there are a few more things. There are a lot more things you have to do if you have formed a corporation or a limited liability company. There's a lot more things having to do with that business entity as opposed to just the name itself. The name registration is still pretty simple. There's a lot more you have to do if you do that, and that is something that I think you should get into after you've assessed whether this business is even going to work for you. But basically, registering the name is one of the few things you need to do business in your area under that name. And then the next thing I would grab as soon as possible probably is try to grab that domain name, or as close as you can get to it. If not the .com, try to get the .net or the whichever one you think is going to fit you the best. You can reserve that. You don't need to be ready to make a website yet. You don't need to do anything with it. It's very inexpensive to just reserve the domain name and save that there so that no one else can get it until you're ready to use it. And I would recommend that you do that. Go ahead and do that so that you'll have that ready when you are ready to make a website or do other things like that. So those are the main things you need to do to get started. What you probably don't need to do and don't need to be intimidated about are things like designing a logo, choosing colors, having business cards, having a tax resale certificate, filing for sales tax, and doing all your kind of tax exempt purchases. All those things are quite helpful when you move into a bigger phase of business. And if you are interested in those things, you'd like me to do a video where I talk more about those things, I would be happy to. Let me know in the comments if you're interested in kind of that, the next step, the next level, where you go. I'd be happy to talk about that. I've been self-employed for many years, like I said, so I can answer those questions too. Now, the main thing you need to understand, wherever you live, you need to search in your area for whatever kind of the equivalent is to what I'm talking about, but there will be something similar to that. Basically, people in your area need to know that someone's doing business under this name and who that person is, and you just need to let them know. It's a fairly simple process, so don't let that keep you from getting started. And I want to encourage you, get started, and I wish you all the best. And if you have any questions, ask me below. I'd love to start a conversation with you. Thanks a lot.